Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new series that I'll be hosting for our class. It's called In Our Night Sky, and what I'm going to be doing with these series of videos, which I'll release weekly or every other week, is I'm going to be telling you about something that you can go outside and observe from our Knoxville skies, or at least in the general United States, you should be able to observe all the objects that I'm going to be talking about. So this is the early February edition, and we're going to start with one of the most recognizable constellations in the sky. You have probably already guessed that this video is going to be about Orion. Over on the right, I have an image of most of the constellation of Orion, which you can easily identify by the asterism of Orion's belt. These three stars right here. And once you have identified Orion's belt, you can probably start to see all of the constellation figure of Orion because it's one of those few constellation figures that actually looks like what it's supposed to be. Orion is a hunter, so this should look like a person. So we can go from the belt of Orion and go up to the two shoulders. And the leftmost shoulder is the easiest, or at least as it's presented on the screen, is the easiest one to identify because it is a brilliantly reddish orange object. Very, very bright in the night sky. It is the star Betelgeuse. And then another easy one to identify is the foot of Orion, one of the feet of Orion. You can see down here. This star right here is Rigel, another one of the brightest stars in the sky. So Orion has two of some of the brightest stars in our sky. And then once you can see that, see Orion, you can probably make out the rest of the constellation from the belt. You can see that he has a sword, he has another foot, and a little bit off screen, he would have a bow, and then he's holding up a club as well. Some people say the bow is a shield and that the club is actually a sword. And this would be the scabbard of the sword. But instead of actually just showing you these pictures of Orion and be like, well, that's it. What I want to do is I want to give you a good and easy to use guide about how you can go outside and observe Orion for yourself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you instructions using our local sky coordinates, our horizontal coordinates, in a very simple and easy to communicate way. That's why we like to use horizontal coordinates for our local sky because they're very easily communicated and they tell you exactly where to go look and when to look. And to do this, I'm going to use a program called Stellarium. It's been linked on Canvas, so you should have access to it. But again, whenever I announce this video, I'll send another link. And whenever you open up Stellarium, free program to download, what it does is it's going to give you a night sky simulator and a day sky simulator. So when you open it up, it's just going to be a view of what is happening right now in the sky. The horizon is just a picture, a generic picture that they use. But the first thing I always do whenever I'm trying to say plan an astrophotography event or actually go out and see what kind of stargazing I might want to do is I use this button right here and I stop time. Now I can have full control over time and I don't have to worry about the seconds ticking away. Not that important for this demonstration, but it will make it a little bit easier. The next thing I do is I open up the sidebar and I'm gonna go over here to the date and time window. So here you can see that we are the 10th of February, Wednesday, the 10th of February. And right now I'm filming this at about 6:10 p.m. It's easiest to view this at 7 or 7:30, so I don't have a whole lot of work to do. I'll have the video out. Hopefully you'll watch it before then. But these times are going to work well for the next week or to 2 weeks. Because remember, the stars move a little bit westward night after night, but only by about 1 degree. So over a course of 2 weeks, they'll have moved about 14 degrees towards the west, which isn't a huge amount of sky they'll be moving in 2 weeks. So everything I'm saying now on the 10th should be applicable for at least 2 weeks into the future. All right, so now I'm going to move it to 7 p.m. And let's give you all actually a little bit more time. Let's move it to 7:30 p.m. And no, I don't have OCD tendencies at all. But if I'm gonna make it 7:30, I'm gonna make it 7:30. Okay, so now here we are at 7:30 p.m. And the view always starts by looking to the south. I'm going to change my view, so I'm looking to the southeast, and then I'm gonna look up above the horizon, and maybe you can see, I'm gonna zoom out a little bit so you can see the horizon still. Maybe you can start to see, here's that belt of Orion, here's Betelgeuse, and here's Rigel. There's the sword of Orion. But I wanna go ahead and give you some constellation lines so we can see the full figure. And let's put a label on there as well. So here we have Orion. Now you can see the bow and the club. So you can see that Betelgeuse is the shoulder. And now what I'm going to do is I want to go ahead and show you, since this was a little bit of a sticking part for our early material, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the constellation boundary so we can see the entire constellation. If you're curious, this is under star lore. Going to turn on the boundaries, get rid of that. So our constellation figure Orion is this pattern of stars that we normally recognize. But the constellation of Orion is the region of sky contained within these boundaries. And you can see it goes around. So every object within these boundaries, which the Orion constellation figure lies in, is the constellation Orion. It is a region of the sky. It is like a state. If the sky was a map of the US, it would be like a state outline. All right, so now you can see Orion, but I still haven't told you the easy how to go view it using our horizontal coordinate system. I want to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all the labels and pretty things that I just put up and tell you how you can go out and view this. So this will work about 7:30 p.m. So just a little bit after sunset. It's one of the best times to see it, but you can see it from most of the early evening to the late evening. But I'm giving you this, remember horizontal coordinates are a specific when. So 7:30 p.m. What you want to do is go outside and look nearly due southeast. And yes, I'll give, instead of giving your azimuth in degrees, I'm just going to give it in cardinal directions. So southeast is directly between east and south. If you really do want to know what the azimuth would be, so east is 90, south is 180. So between that would be 90 plus 45 would give me to about 135 degrees of azimuth. So find north, rotate 135 degrees, or just look to the southeast. Okay, so now you know what direction to look at 7:30. How high do you look up? And I'm going to use one of the special features of Stellarium here. Click on one of the stars, and I'll see that at 7:30 it has azimuth 149 degrees. Hey, it wasn't very far off with my estimate. It's a little bit south of southeast. And it's at altitude of just shy of 50 degrees above the horizon, which, okay, 50 degrees above the horizon. Remember, your horizon is at 0 degrees altitude, and straight up ahead, pointing towards your zenith, is 90 degrees of altitude. And a convenient way to measure off degrees, eyeball number of degrees of altitude in the sky, is to stick your fist out. And what you're going to do is you're going to measure across the fingers. So you're going to orient your fist so that the bottom is here and the top here. Set it on the horizon. And that's about 10 degrees when your fist is at arm's length. So then if I want to go up to 50 degrees, I'll go up 5 fists. So 1 fist, 2 fists, 3 fists, 4, 5, and follow down the edge of my arm. Now I'm looking up at 50 degrees. So if I was going to go look at Orion, what I'd do is I'd head outside at 7:30 p.m. I'd look to the southeast, and then I would count 5 fists above the horizon to estimate 50 degrees above the horizon, and you'll see Orion hanging out in the sky right there. Now you know how to go observe Orion, but I want to give you a little bit of extra information, to give you a little bit of motivation to actually go out there and see this. And what I'm going to ask you to do, challenge you to do, is one, if you have a camera that has a good night mode feature, or you just have a good DSLR camera and want to practice some astrophotography, take a picture of the constellation and post it. Send it to me. We'll make a discussion where we can share all that kind of information. Be kind of fun to see how that progresses over the semester. But the challenge that I want to issue to each and every one that doesn't require a camera is go find Orion in the sky. It's supposed to be maybe clear enough tonight, although it's looking like it's a little bit cloudier than forecasted. Next week is supposed to be pretty clear. So go find Orion, find the belt of Orion, Orion's belt, the asterism, and then look at the sword. You'll see 3 stars in the sword, except one of those 3, the middle one, isn't a star. You'll see that stars are nice little points of light, and then that middle one looks like this little fuzzy smudge, not quite star-like, or star-like. That's because it's not a star. It is the Great Nebula in Orion. It is a nebula, a cloud of gas and dust in outer space. Let's just zoom in on it. So here I'm getting closer. This is naked eye visible. So now you can see, oh, that's clearly not a star. There's something going on there. So I can zoom in on it. And this is what it would look like from, say, a Hubble Space Telescope, or really you can get this with a small telescope and a little bit of know-how with a digital camera hooked up to your telescope. But you can see this object naked eye. And as I said, it is a nebula. And specifically, this is a molecular cloud and an emission nebula. The molecular cloud refers to, you can see all this wonderful dust and gas that's there. And then it's an emission nebula. You see that red the faintly pink red glowing color? That's from ionized hydrogen giving off its characteristic reddish pink color. But what's really cool about this is when you're looking at the Great Nebula in Orion, this is also called a stellar nursery. You can see all of these uh, blue stars that are hanging out here. These are forming in the stellar nursery right now. This is an active region of star formation. New stars are being born within the Orion Nebula. So you can go outside this week and for most of the winter, find Orion in the sky, find the sword, look at that smudge in the middle of the sword, know that you're looking at a nebula, and you're looking at a place where entire new stellar systems are currently being formed. And if you're forming new stellar systems, you're forming new planets that give it a couple billion years, and imagine all the possibilities of maybe a civilization, some life will evolve and it'll become intelligent life. You can go out there and cosmically connect with that just by looking at Betelgeuse or looking at Orion and then looking for the Great Nebula in Orion. If you think you can get a picture of it, please share that. But with that, I will end our first tutorial. You now know how to see Orion. Go outside, 7:30ish p.m. For most of February, that will work. Look to the southeast and look up 50 degrees, which is 5/5 above the horizon, and you will find Orion. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this tour of the sky.